Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have an awesome show for you planned today. It is Red Friday. That's why I'm wearing my Mental Joe red Warrior to Garden t-shirt, which
That's
is
a double dip right there.
double dip. I'm going to hit all of the buttons in a second here. Don't worry.
Check. I'm going to subscribe to your
Goodness.
awesomeness in a sec.
You people should be subscribing. They should be hitting the like button. They should be hitting the notification bell. They should be doing all that good stuff as well. This month, June, is Men's Mental Health Month. We're going to be talking about facets of mental health every day this month, as we have been so far. We've had some pretty awesome conversations so far, I gotta say. It's been pretty sweet. What do you guys think?
I agree.
Yeah.
For sure. I've been tracking.
So today, we're going to have, as Shaun said earlier, a bit heavier of a topic. But that's okay, because we need to have these conversations anyway. Anybody got any points or thoughts before we dive into the meat and potatoes, as Shaun likes to put?
Yeah, so you have stated that we're going to get into a heavier subject. That's true. And again, none of us are doctors.
Mhm.
And the only advice or opinions or stories that we're going to tell throughout this entire hour is based on our own experiences of talking with other men and our own personal lives. And if anyone has, if throughout this entire conversation, if anyone has any questions that start bubbling up and you feel that we're not the right guys to answer those questions, or if you feel that this conversation is making you uncomfortable, bounce. Jump straight out of the conversation. And if you feel like you need to talk to another friend, or you need to talk to someone else, if you need to talk to a professional, if you need to talk to your neighbor, do that immediately.
Yep. 100%.
Don't hang out here for the hour thinking that if you're starting to feel uncomfortable, if you just wait another few minutes in the conversation, it's going to get better, because it might not, or it might. But if you start feeling uncomfortable, bounce and talk to someone about why you're feeling uncomfortable.
That is a great point. And on the, I guess not the opposite side, but in line with that, if you do have questions and you think that we are people that you would like to hear from, by all means, put them in the comments. I can always throw them up and we can discuss them en masse here on the collective, or if you get this afterwards, we read them all anyway, so we can always get back to you later. So any other thoughts percolating before we dive in? Everybody good?
Good.
Okay, let's dive into the conversation. Okay. Suicide and ideation. Now, this is as I was listening to your live earlier, Shaun, and you hit a really good couple of points. You said this isn't not so much a painful discussion, but it is a challenging discussion. And I think it's challenging because it requires a extreme level of vulnerability. We have to be able to bare our souls in our absolute worst moments so that others can hopefully learn, hopefully gain something from that. And I can start off with myself. I mean, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. As you stated, you're setting the stage to be careful with language.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really, really want to focus on that this hour. Mm-hmm. And already I think we're not off to a great start, because you framed it as such. Bare your soul, which then someone out there is thinking like, no way am I bearing my soul. You're not bearing your soul. You're sitting down in front of someone and having a casual conversation, or as casual as you can make it. It's not, this is not a conversation that someone should step into with intense trepidation. No one out there should be feeling like they're about to fly to Mars and it's impossible. It's just a conversation. No one's bearing anyone's souls, for lack of a better term. It's just having an open, transparent conversation.
That's a good point. Absolutely. My thought was that I guess, you know what? You're right. The image in my head already had put it in that category.
100%.
But you're 100. Yeah, and that's why I think it's challenging, because that was the image I had in my head, was it was going to be maybe a difficult conversation, but it really shouldn't be. This is four of us hanging out, and we are going to be chatting about this. So I can talk about my personal interactions with it. But before we do that, does anybody have any stories or anything that they would like to pass on before I hog the mic for a little while? Everybody good? Okay.
All gone.
Okay. So the again, this is going to be challenging for me because we're live on the internet. We're talking with a whole bunch of other people.
You're literally reframing your thoughts right now.
I am literally in the moment. It's pretty crazy.
Based on the idea that we're trying to reframe the language on this conversation.
So here we go, I guess. I have never completed an attempt of suicide. Let me put it that way. I have had ideation on multiple times throughout my life. I have made 3 attempts, I guess you would say. First one when I was 13, and I went outside because I thought it was middle of winter. It was like -30, something like that, and I had heard somewhere that it was an easy way to go. Was that you felt warm and near the end, and I went outside and I just laid in the snow. And I did that because I was getting mercilessly bullied at school, at home, and I did not see a way out of any of that. It looked like it was going to continue on in that realm for the next forever. So I was looking for a way out, and that was the first time that really kind of crept into my mind. And actually what made me go back inside was that I was cold. It got to the point that my fingers start to hurt, everything starts to be painful, and I was like, okay, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Back inside. I didn't tell anybody about that until I was, I guess, talking to my doc in my late 30s. And so the difficulty I always had talking about it was the fact that it seemed like I was looking for the easy way out. So therefore I was not being the ideal man, boy, toughing it out, handling the situation, et cetera, whatever the mindset at the time was back in the 90s. And again, for years, I thought I was the only one. I thought this was a me problem, that I was unable to cope with the daily life of me. And therefore I was the only one that could possibly understand it, so nobody else would. But that was my first brush with it. And it was liberating, actually, at one point. Once I actually started talking to my doc about it, that it took a weight off my shoulders. It took something like I could breathe a little deeper, kind of deal. Anybody else feel in a similar manner in that time period, I guess, when you're 13, 14, 15?
I can jump in.
Yeah.
So I've had suicide ideation. I never made any attempts, but I've thought about it various different occasions. So we were speaking on being bullied and whatnot in high school. I was, like a lot of people, bullied. But I never actually thought about any suicide ideation at that time. It was more so later in life, like probably in my early 20s, when I was actually at RMC. And when I was there, I actually started thinking about it a lot more because I felt like at that time, I wasn't who I wanted to be at that time. So it was a lot of like thinking about, who I should have been or who I could have been or who I wanted to be. And I was none of those things. So, then you start drinking and that started adding to the ideation. And so that was probably the first time I actually started thinking about it, probably in and around 21, 22, in around that time.
Interesting. Dave or Shaun, any thoughts?
I'll let Shaun go first.
Okay, sure. I've never had any suicidal ideations, and I'm happy about that, of course. But what that doesn't allow me to do is have a deep understanding of people who do have suicidal ideations. And I've stated this before in the past, that my brother committed suicide when I was a teenager. I was about 16 years old myself, my younger brother, and he committed suicide because of bullying. We were both bullied and we didn't have the tools or resources to work through that. He killed himself, blew his head off with my 30-30 Winchester, my deer rifle, in my own bedroom. And so that's a difficult thing as a kid. But I didn't understand how he got there. I didn't understand why he thought those things, and I didn't understand how I should process that. Because again, I've never had suicidal ideations. It was like not a foreign concept to me, but it was a concept that I couldn't deeply understand at my core. And so when we speak about suicide or suicidal ideations, my connection with it is not full arm's distance. It's within arm's reach, but I don't feel it deeply in my soul as a deeply understood subject, even though I have a deep personal connection with it. So in respect to suicide and suicidal ideation, from a young age, I've been exposed to it, but throughout my entire life till this day, I've spent many days thinking about the subject on how to make it better for other, specifically men, to be honest. And I don't have any real heavy hitting solutions, of course. We'll talk about some things today that'll hopefully be helpful to some people out there. But in respect to me, I don't have any suicidal ideations.
Right on. Dave, any thoughts?
Well, first of all, the fact that I want to say thank you for everybody for sharing your story, and especially Shaun. I'm sorry about your loss for your younger brother. That's horrifying. And I'm just grateful that you told me that or shared that with us. So I want to say thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
I think, yeah, bullying. It's funny how, because I was bullied as well, and it kind of reverts back to that as well. Luckily for me, like, I ended up joining the military at such a young age, where I believe some of that ideation ended up dissipating. It was more later in my military career where, failed relationships and stuff like that, living out of the duffel bag my whole life and just kind of living life out of the fast lane, rock and roll and alcohol and just, living this lifestyle that wasn't necessarily the healthiest, definitely started to add up. And I started to have the ideation very specific of what and how I wanted to do it. And to think back, it's heartbreaking to think that I even thought that how I wanted to do that. But what also kind of threw me off as well is that how not normal, sorry, how like my mom, I'll give you an example. She told me after my incident that she actually had ideation of suicide, and that broke my heart in the thought of how she told me how she envisioned it. But the thing that saved her from never doing it, I guess, was the thought of me, and she held on to that. And I think if we do have those ideations, I've had the ideation, what's ended up sadly becoming the outcome of me following through with an attempt. Thank God, surviving. I'm just saying that if you are having those thoughts, I think it's very important that these conversations are healthy. I think it's good to have those conversations. But if you're constantly replaying them, I want to, hopefully, if there are people watching, go get medical help, man. If you're constantly replaying in your head over and over and you're stressed and you're replaying it, man, like, I want you to take care of yourselves, because this is happening way too much.
Yeah.
I do have some thoughts coming off of that, if you don't mind, Dave. So what you just stated is super important, that because of your incident, you then came to learn about how it could have been maybe multi-generational, that there was potential suicidal ideation within your family line. And so the idea being that if you would have been aware of that beforehand, it might have changed your mind on your approach to this subject. And so that's kind of what we're doing today, by the way, is we're openly talking about this subject with hope that people who hear this recognize that this is not an uncommon thing.
Yep.
That the people that you see on the sidewalk most days, we're unaware that they're having these issues.
Mhm.
And it's by having these open conversations, it should draw everyone's attention to this is far less, it's more common to see people acting normally while struggling inside. And
Yeah.
it's far less common for people to address it because it's an uncomfortable subject. And by uncomfortable, I mean challenging. And so our job today is to make the uncomfortable subject, the challenging subject, available to everyone by the end of this hour to think through a few things and hopefully have some actionable items in respect to suicide and suicidal ideation. And so as you were talking, I was looking at what you're wearing. And of course, you've got your Bushwookie hoodie on, which is awesome. And you know what that shows to me, or at least this is my impression, my interpretation. It shows a guy who's proud of something that he's involved with himself, his own brand, himself. And at one point you weren't proud.
No.
But now you are, for whatever reasons, and maybe we'll jump into that or not. But for now, it's just unimportant. You're now re-proud of who you are. And the other piece that really stood out to me is you're wearing Dallas Alexander's hat, which is it's a great design, by the way.
I
And
love it.
nod to Dallas. And what I see there is a guy representing another guy. It's a brother being a brother to another brother. And I dig that, man. That's what we're supposed to be doing over here. And I can't be a brother with everyone, but I'm trying to be a brother with as many people as I can.
Yeah.
And you're representing that. You're representing yourself and you're representing the brotherhood. And I really dig that, pal.
You're gonna make me cry. Stop it.
Well, if I only need another 10 seconds, I'll keep talking.
I wanted to jump in on that, Shaun. I think you're pretty. I think you're right in the sense that it's probably far more common that people maybe think about these things and don't articulate it very often. So for me, this is the first time I've ever actually even talked about it to anybody and thinking about various different things. I've never mentioned it to anyone and I kept it to myself because I thought, well, I don't want to look a certain way or act a certain way. But, speaking out about it or at least having an honest discussion, it almost, I don't want to say normalizes, but you can relate to more people, I guess, like see that more people may have some issues or some concerns. And I guess when we can talk more freely about it, then maybe we can trend things over the people that we can kind of see what's causing these reactions, why we think in certain ways, what's happening in our lives, what kind of behaviors are we emulating, all these different things. Now we can actually start at least the conversation of how do we counter it.
Yeah, I like that. And, as you were speaking there, Sach, I was considering how we all maybe need to just be more sensitive to each other. And I don't mean sensitive in the sense of I'm trying to better understand the person in front of me, because I'm always trying to do that. What I'm suggesting is a more refined approach to trying to understand the person in front of me by being a little more sensitive to whether they have deeper struggles than I'm aware of or not at that moment.
I think this is an interesting point I was thinking about while we were talking about this, is the fact that the ideation will change over time as well. So, when I was young and I was going into ideation, it was more along the lines of I want out, right? I don't want this pain anymore, so I just want out. And so I was looking at it as an escape. Now, that changed later on because as an adult, when I think I was late 20s, the next time it really went down that rabbit hole was I didn't want to be a burden at that point. So it shifted from just trying to get away from the pain to I want to alleviate the pain of everyone else. And I think that definitely needs to be talked about because I think a lot of us struggle, and me especially, with the idea that being sick or being injured or being unable to perform like we used to makes us a burden on all of the people around us. Because
Can I ask a question real quick?
yeah, by all means.
So, so do you think it's a feeling like being a burden, or you still have? Do you think it was still that idea of, oh, I just want to get out because you don't feel a value, you don't feel a purpose, you don't feel a sense of belonging, or something related to that, rather than the burden part? That makes sense. What I'm asking?
It does. It does make sense. And personally, for me, it was more the burden side of it. There was a part of it that was definitely like I do want the pain to end. I want the demons to go away. I want the nightmares to stop. I want all these things to not happen. But the overarching theme of it was, because all those things are happening, I'm making my wife's life really hard. I'm making my kids' life really hard. I'm making my parents, all the people that are supporting me doing things, they're having to pick up the slack for me. And so by me feeling like a burden, especially coming from a military and first responder type I guess mindset's not so much the job, but the mindset of being a provider, of being a protector, of being the guy, the burden was the big one. I really felt as though I was burdening everyone else around me. And then even to reach out to somebody, we talked about this the other day, is that it feels like I'm inconveniencing someone else, because I'm going to wreck their day by making them sit down and talk about hard things with me, kind of stuff. So there is a shift at times based on not only your experience, but your mentality and, a number of other pieces of your life that come into it. So I just wanted to add that point, is that it can change. And that if you ideate in one way, it can change something else. Dave?
Yeah. So I was having an interesting conversation with Aaron Dale. Aaron Dale is now a Toronto police officer, retired veteran from Kansas-Ofcom. He's now working on the military veteran wellness program, so it helps law enforcement with veterans in distress or homeless, and so that they get the proper help with Veterans Affairs, so that they're not just, because dealing with veterans, there's different levels of mental health there as well, right? But like, I obviously want to be open for everybody. But the one thing that, like, sadly, Kansas-Ofcom has a fallen brother recently, and I cried. I'll be honest, I never knew him, but I cried. And Aaron Dale made a comment. He's like, like, these conversations are very difficult. You know what I mean? Especially like, because let's say, like, Chance, you're talking about that you're not providing very well, or you're not feeling like that. These are people who are probably experiencing these things inside of them, where they're like, what, if I'm gone, I'll be better off. And like, yeah, the family had a GoFundMe page going, right? And so there's someone who's probably suffering, and then like, what, if I remove myself out of the image, I can probably get $150,000 from my family. They'll be okay. I'll be out of the image. And that is a very scary, slippery slope that we have to be all very cautious, because at the end of the day, that's the wrong choice. So whoever's watching this, and for us having this conversation, is the wrong choice. And then money is, like, your life is worth more than $150,000. Let's put it that way. You know what I mean? And I just hope that we collectively work together to hopefully find some solutions. So Aaron Dale made a recommendation that, with my experience, I'm going to start, like, I've been working with medical professionals and psychologists for about a year now, just over a year. And I want to actually have maybe like a platform where I work with a proper doctor, and actually maybe we can do a little bit more so that we can help everybody in other ways, right? Like, this is a great way where it's almost like we're confronting the suicide ideation, which I kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, yeah, the thought's there. It's not necessarily abnormal. We have that, recognize it, and do something positive with it. Don't spool it around, right? That's where I want this conversation to go. But I can understand that those who, like, I've been told by other people that when I shared my story, it helped a lot of people. But on the other side, there were people who were on a slippery slope being like, well, if Dave can do it, I can do it too. You know, and it's like, fuck, man, that's not what we want. Excuse me.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
again, you can't control other people's behaviors. And if you're doing it with good intention and you're trying to do something positive,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really control somebody else's behavior, right? And if you're trying to share something like how we're doing it right now, almost you know, trying to break the stigma essentially, and if someone uses that to find a reason to do something else, well, I mean, hopefully they don't, but
Yeah.
we still have to have these conversations either way.
Yeah.
I agree, man.
Shaun, you're muted, bud.
Sorry.
All good.
You're right. We're not trying to control anyone out there, boys, for sure. What we're trying to do is shape the conversation to some degree. And shape it is a weird word because, as far as I'm concerned, it's shapeless right now. Like this entire subject, suicide and suicidal ideation. Hands up, anyone who's attended a panel on a live chat podcast where it discusses suicidal ideation. Anyone? Anyone? Not me. And so the conversation, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't exist up until now. So we're just trying to shape it. We're loosely and broadly making it into a shape and pushing it out there for others to refine, for others to think about, for others to shape in a way that works for their heads. So we're going to cover a bunch of subjects on this particular topic, but we're not shaping it so finely that we are handing anyone a katana and saying, it's all solved. There's your beautiful sword. We're not shaping a sword. We're just shaping the metal and then handing it out for others to refine it in their own lives, as it were.
Yeah,
I'll say this.
Well said.
I'll say this on the suicidal ideation. It is I think it's a bit of a classic example where, because to your point, Dave, because the conversation just doesn't happen frequently enough, there will be people who listen to your words, your previous words, and think, that's right on that Dave is standing up and speaking openly about this. And then to your next point, which was, but there'll be a small portion of society that will look at that and think of as, now it's just being green lit and now I can do whatever I want to do and not think deeply about the subject.
Yeah.
But obviously that's not what you're saying. What we are saying is, everyone just stop for a moment.
Yeah.
And think about things a little more deeply, but not about yourself. Because I've listened to this topic many, many times, and listening to you guys, and it was Chance that made me think about it, where he was considering himself a burden, and he was bummed that his wife was having to carry the groceries in because he couldn't carry the groceries in, and all the little stories that we tell ourselves. All the focus is all about Chance Burles and how Chance Burles can't do anything.
Yep.
But it ain't about Chance Burles. It's about everyone around him. And we categorize it as we're letting everyone down around us. But again, language, it's the words that are important. You're not letting anyone down. What you've got is an opportunity to pick up the pace. Because we tell ourselves we're letting everyone down, and then that's the prevailing theme. That's what I do. I let everyone down, and now I'm out of view. But what it should be is, man, this is super hard. How can I help my team? What do I need to do? Just a little bit to help out today, instead of, I'm letting everyone down. I want to try to help everyone. And that's, I mean, it sounds so dumb because it's so simple, but it is literally the game changer of your mindset. If you're telling yourself that I'm letting everyone down, well, that's what you do. You go down. If you're telling yourself, I need to help those around me, well, that's what you do. You move up. And it doesn't mean that you're going to help everyone and move up at the velocity that you want to move up at. The velocity will be the velocity. Half an inch a day, whatever. A mile a day, who cares? Up is up, down is down. And we need to focus on up.
Yep. Dave?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, man. I think, sorry.
No, go ahead, Sach. You're good.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. And I think this topic is taboo. As soon as you mention it, people are like, I don't want to talk about anything. oh, I don't want to. Even if we don't do it perfectly right now, I think it's good that we're having the conversation
Agreed.
Mhm.
and just speaking about things. And like, I mean, I'd say about 2 or 3 years ago, I was probably in a state where I was feeling. I don't know if I was feeling a burden, but I was feeling like a loser.
Mhm.
I had no value. I felt like I had no purpose, and I didn't have any suicidal ideation at that time. But I was on that path. I was on that road to maybe if there wasn't some sort of pattern interrupt, I would have probably had some problems. And to Shaun's point, you know, I started thinking about the greater team around me as opposed to just myself, and I starting to see a little bit of momentum. And I think, and then I credit Shaun for some of that help and kind of pointing me in the right direction to kind of get me out of that ditch.
It's a pretty easy template. I mean, honestly, it's a pretty easy template. It's not that anyone out there is so difficult to work with that you can't work with them. The template is simple. Teaching a person how to be part of a team or teaching a person how to want to help the team. That's kind of all it is. And it starts with looking at another, well, because it's men's mental health month. It requires looking another dude in the eye and saying, dude, give me a hand. This is what we have to do together. And put us on task. Or in this case, put Sach on task so that Sach and I are working together on a task. The moment that someone engages in a task, then it's just a matter of time until you build it out so that they're setting tasks for others. And then it's just a team working on team stuff. But the individual who's struggling as an isolated individual in their own head, like they've got no friends or no purpose or no anything, all it takes is a dude to walk up on another dude and say, hey, man, can you give me a hand moving that box? Yeah, you grab that end, I'll grab this end, let's put it over there. Now we're a team. And then you just build that out over a period of time to get them to the objective of where now they're helping others move boxes.
The question is, how do you get the
abuse.
person? The question is, how do you get that person to say that?
Yeah.
The question is, how do you drive them to be able to ask for that help?
Well, that's right. And you know, that is the devil is in the details, as they say. And if it was as simple as step one is ... then it would be a one-page book. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know how big the book is, but it's more than one page. And the idea being that we all have a book in our hand called Our Life Experiences. Mine has a few chapters in. Other people's books have more chapters than mine, whatever. But the chapters that I've got have enabled me to look at a person and think, okay, I think this is how it's going to be done. And I engage, action, make an effort. And within 3 seconds, I'll recalibrate. And 104 days later, I'll recalibrate. And I'll recalibrate as many times as it takes to get that individual on the right trajectory so that they can then start helping others move boxes.
It's a great point. We have a comment here from Rob that I wanted to point out because it's really is fantastic. It says, Rob Murray Airsoft. Well, first off, Rob, good to see you. Problem is, in moments of ideation or attempt, you're not thinking from a place of logic. Sometimes the human perceptual limit becomes even more limited, and our brains tend to reinforce those limits. If the brain thinks you're a burden and that you're worthless, it will find every piece of potential evidence that makes it true, and quite literally ignores the most glaring evidence contrary. And it's an accurate statement. The one of the most difficult parts when I was in those moments, and actually the thing that broke me out of the ideation in my last moment of being in this, where I had my pistol in my hand and I was reading my serial number over and over and over again, was was the fact that it doesn't end there for everybody else. Right. So for me, I'm like, I'm feeling like a burden and I feel like I'm making everybody's life harder around me. And this is horrible. I want to be not here. And so illogically, it makes sense. I will just go poof, disappear. Right. I won't be here anymore. But logically, the thing that actually broke me out of that step was understanding that that doesn't end the situation for everybody else. right? Because there's now a
No,
body
in that
needs-
moment, you became the burden.
and then I became the burden. Exactly. So that's what broke me out of that step, was all of the extra stuff that's going to happen after I'm gone. Now I'm actually the burden. Now I'm adding even more stress onto everybody else, and even more aggravation, and more money, and more da da da. So by I guess thinking in that moment, that was the one logical thing that I was able to grab onto and go, okay, wait, no, this isn't going to turn out the way I want it to, and went from there. So I think that is it's a very valid point, Rob. 100%. You're not thinking logically when you're in those moments.
So that's good that you had a team around you to fall back on then, right?
100%.
Your family, your kids, these are people that you could rely on to, even when they didn't even know, to keep you on track.
Yep, absolutely.
Can I
Yeah.
add something there with Rob as well there? I
Yeah.
appreciate that he did comment that. I think that when you are having those, like, I was a person, I did check myself into mental health periodically and stuff when I was in battalion, just because I don't know, I guess I just knew, I could feel it, like I had the ideation, it was there, and if you are spiraling in that negative pit of you just beating yourself down, try to assess your surroundings and get professional help. I guess at the end of the day, I just want to make sure if I have to keep saying that, if that's all I say is get professional help, I'm gonna do it, man. Like,
That's a pretty solid thing to say, though, man.
It is 100% solid thing to say. Yeah.
It is good advice, but I'd like to also add an addendum to that. And it is, yeah, definitely seek professional advice. But let me ask you this question, pal. If there was no professionals in the world at all, you were just you in your battalion, how would you have solved the problem? How would you do
My
it in a different way?
yeah, my team was everything to me, right? So my sniper team, like I love working with them, even the boys in decoy. Like, yeah, surrounding yourself around good people is an incredible, powerful thing.
Yeah.
And so to build off of that, is it fair to say that, again, there's no professional mental health experts in the world now in my theoretical model? You're with your guys, sniper team, you know how tight that is.
Yep.
Would it have worked if you would have had, we'll call it the guts, the conviction, the wherewithal, the ability? If you could have, in that moment in your sniper team room, just said, hey, boys, I'm going to drop one on you here. It's pretty heavy, but I need to talk about that. If you could have opened up in that moment, what do you think would have come of it?
I actually did once open up to them, and they were pretty concerned. And after that conversation, I really didn't have that thought for a very, very long time. Actually, to help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think one of the there's some great comments here. I'm going to get to them in a second, and I think one of the things that has allowed me not to fall back down into that hole is being as open and honest about it as possible, right? And that when I'm feeling down, or I can even see the edge of the rabbit hole, I immediately go talk to somebody, whether it be my medical professional, my doc, or one of you boys, or anybody else in the team. Like I will immediately reach out and go, okay, I need another opinion on this, because your brain will lie to you. And unfortunately, I can't say unfortunately, it is something that can be controlled, but it is a learned skill. And if you don't have the training, or you don't have the time or the experience in order to manage your own thoughts, your brain will lie to you. We have a great comment from Tanya here. She says, I practice thinking of 10 things that show or that life is awesome for every one piece of evidence I'm worthless. Which I think is a great thing to intentionally put those down.
Also, I think being stubborn is a pretty good thing too.
I agree.
I mean, to be honest, I mean, for me, probably why I never really went down that road, other than the ideation and maybe thinking about it from time to time, is that I'm super stubborn. And for me, I mean, I can't say I never would, because I don't know. And But I've experienced some pretty, unpleasant things throughout my life, like many people have. And I've certain words, certain people come in my head whenever I've gotten close to those things. And it's kind of kept me away. And whatever those internal dialogues I do have from other people, it's usually people that used to pick on me or treat me like garbage. And then I'm reminded of those people. And then I'm like, F you, I'll show you. And then kind of stick with it and keep going.
Yeah. So we got another couple of comments. Any other thoughts on that before I got another couple of comments here I wanted to hit?
One more, I guess
Dave,
I
yeah,
want to touch on. Since I've been working with a psychologist for about a year, I've also learned that I have very strong emotions. So I was blessed with a big heart where I can be very loving and fun and stuff like that. And I also have a pretty bad temper as well. And being mindful of my emotions, if anybody ever wants to, this book right here, it's got a lot of different things that will help you understand some of the emotions and your thoughts that you're experiencing. So, like, if some people don't have the resources to medical professionals or have, or can take time to get this book I bought online. I found that was a great workbook to actually understand a lot of who I am. And you got to hold yourself accountable with it too, right?
Yep,
Take some
100%.
ownership.
We'll add that to the show notes, Chance.
For sure. Absolutely. So we have some other comments here. And this, again, these are other people's experiences and stuff. So Rob says, for me, to break out of the cycle was understanding that while I am my brain, it doesn't mean the thoughts that my brain has or had could be a lie. And that outside perspective was key. And absolutely, those things are 100% true. Tanya, for me, ideation is a symptom I've neglected my limits. I go back to basics: sunlight, food, sleep, movement, and to tell a trusted person that I'm feeling suicidal and get help. She continues with, the second I tell someone, the shame evaporates and the burden is shared. Look for people who have field tested training and skills to navigate this, as most tend to freak out. And this is why we're talking about openly and in a more relaxed fashion, I guess. It's not an academic conversation, right? This is all anecdotal information based on our experiences, but I think that's part of it, is that the more we talk about it, the less people will freak out.
Well, I think medical practitioners don't have a monopoly on talking about it, right?
Well, they do have a monopoly on the invoice.
That's true.
Fair, but I think, at the end of the day, we're the people that are affected by things. And if we can have conversations, we're not telling people how to do things the way they should be doing it. But at least if we're having conversations, it makes it easier for someone else to say something to someone when they need it. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do here, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And then the last comment I had on this one was, Rob kicked this in, was, didn't mean that the thoughts themselves couldn't be a lie. That was how I changed the pattern, most importantly, when alone. This is a great one, is that when you're alone and you don't have access to medical professionals, or say you don't even have access to a good group of people that you can talk to.
Or even your own brain.
Or even your own brain to trust. I think, at least from my point of view, the best thing you can do is to go back to basics. I really love what Tanya put here. Sunlight, food, sleep, movement.
And curiosity.
Curiosity is a great one too.
And yet most people don't do any of that.
And the reason
why is that? I mean, we're talking about hopes. I hope everyone does that, but they don't. So let's throw hope out the window. Okay. The only way I see it as happening, other than I hope everyone does that, is we're telling people to do it. And I don't mean just telling people to do it in this podcast like Chance just did, and then we never repeat it again. Because I'm freaking sending that same message every single day to anyone who contacts me. Those points are the basics, period. And everyone, whether you've got suicidal ideations or not, needs to focus on the basics. I mean, if your sleep sucks, get your sleep squared away. Because if you don't square away your sleep, and right now you don't have any suicidal ideations, maybe in 10 years you will, because you didn't focus on the basics. You underhydrate, you undereat, you under everything. Guess what? Maybe you don't have a suicidal ideation bone in your body, but you keep underperforming in your life with things that you have under control in your life. We can eat whenever we want to eat. If you're not eating, that's on you. It's all under your control. It's all under our control. So you set yourself up for problems in the future by not focusing on the now.
Yeah. And I think getting people to do things, i.e. sunlight, exercise, these, things that may be out of the norm for them, but they know how to do things, i.e. get up and brush their teeth, right? Everyone brushes their teeth in the morning. So if you can create a habit of doing certain things, you can just throw one thing in the morning, right? Okay, I'm gonna look at the sun, whatever it is.
Or do 22 push-ups the moment that you get out of bed, right?
Yeah.
And so it's positive, routinable actions that help you feel like you're in control of your day. You started off under control, you end it under control. It's your code to write. It's your day. Choose how your day unfolds based on you literally programming your day with the code that you're writing in real time. You can choose to look at the world as a negative, or you can choose to look at the world as a positive. The moment that you roll out of bed, you set the stage for your grand stage of the day. So stand on the stage and make it a freaking opera. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I think it's interesting to see that the veteran community, military community, and first responder communities are affected so much with this, right? When there's so much discipline in those communities. And all it is discipline.
It's irony.
Right?
It's ironic that so many people who know how to do all of this are struggling to do it, because I think, and I'll use a word that is gonna sting, and I'm doing it on purpose because I want to make an impact. I think the reason that the disciplined community is struggling to stay disciplined is because they got lazy. Now, lazy is a really strong word, but I know a bunch of veterans and Leo and first responders who are freaking lazy. They haven't done a freaking thing this year except struggle. That isn't change. Struggling isn't change if every day you struggle. That's the repetition of insanity. So we all have to do something about it every single day. Get out of bed, do your push-ups. Get out of bed, do your ... Create a disciplined routine day that moves you forward. We all know how to do it. We're all taught how to do it. And why is it that we aren't doing it as a community right now? And I think it's just laziness. And I'm calling it out because it's easily correctable. But you got to do something about it.
I think depression is quite a powerful thing as well, right? And I feel like if I'm battling with depression, it's amazing what a 5K run will do to it. It'll kick the crap out of it. I no longer have depression because I accomplished something. You know what I mean? Like, even if that's all I did all day, so. But yeah, you're right. Like, laziness is definitely like a factor of that, and then laziness will also impact onto your depression, right? You have to give yourself. We all have to be a little kinder to ourselves, let alone each other, and I think that will help a lot. But like, especially those battling with depression, I mean, like, I'm sure there's many different levels and scenarios of depression that I have no idea. Right? Like, Shaun, you can easily be a victim of it because of your brother and you being a young man being like exposed to something so traumatic, you know what I mean? But you chose not to allow that to overtake your life, which is actually quite incredible. And I think that's something that people need to pay attention to, that if you are battling with depression, well, what are you going to do about it? Are you like accomplish something? Give yourself something, a pat on the back. Do something that where you can create a pat on the back. But there are some people that, yeah, you're right, they can't even get out of bed in the morning. So
but here's the thing, man. That 5K, maybe they can't get out of the bed, but they can make their bed.
Yep.
Get out and make your bed, and you make it like I used to, with the hospital corners and everything.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can.
And that's what that is a goal accomplished.
I just started making my bed for the last 2 years. for so many, I wasn't even making it. But that one little thing, man, it's something. Every morning I walk away from my bed, it's a hot mess. I look at it, I'm like, oh, I got to get after that. I make my bed.
But when you come home and you have a nice made bed for you, waiting for you, I'm the same way. I'm like, that's nice. I'm looking forward to crawling into that.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I wanted to answer your question, Shaun, because I I had a thought, and I think this might be why. You said why are the discipline community having difficulty, and you said laziness, and I think that's correct.
It's a harsh word. I'd rather use a different word, but
I think there's more to it, though. I think there's an emotional attachment to the lifestyle, and so I say this because there is this this concept when you're surrounded by other disciplined people, and it's easy to stay disciplined when you're surrounded by disciplined people because everybody's disciplined, right? You hold each other accountable, and everybody, if you do something lazy, someone's going to call you on it and be like, hey man, no. And right, yep, my bad, and off you're going to go. And then when you leave that, here in Canada especially, and I say that because we have a very small military / first responder community, and we have a massive freaking country. And so when we leave the military, we separate to the wind, right? You got people in Yellowknife, you got people in Flin Flon, Manitoba, you got people in Ottawa, you got people in you got the guys that you spent your time with that you would hold yourself accountable to are nowhere near you. Now, I'm not saying that as an excuse, but I think that there is an emotional attachment to that when you get out, I don't want to shave. I don't have to shave anymore. Hooray! But that little discipline is what kept you in line through all the training and through all the stuff. No matter how much you hated it, I think that little emotional attachment to the actual active discipline allows that laziness to creep in, if you know what I mean, right?
Maybe.
So,
for how long, though?
For me,
life?
It lasted for quite a while.
Yeah, so
like almost a decade.
So using your example,
yep.
If someone gets out of the military and decides, wow, finally my life is going to be so awesome, I don't have to shave tomorrow. And so if that's your win, cool. But how's that feel 10 years from now when you still haven't shaved and you're still being lazy?
Mm-hmm.
And so 10 years on, you've been telling yourself every day that you're going to do some push-ups that morning to finally get back on the path that works. And 10 years later, you still haven't. How freaking hard is that on a dude's head? Where every morning he wakes up and says, I'm going to change something. And then 24 hours later, repeating that cycle for 10 years, saying, I don't have to shave and I don't have to do anything. There's no team to hold them accountable. So what do they have in the moment? They've got themselves. And if they've been letting themselves down for a decade, do you know how hard that is on a head? We all know it. We all know it. When we're lazy, we know it. When we've been lazy for a decade, that's such a burden to carry that can get changed like that. Bam. Do some push-ups today. Do some push-ups tomorrow. Tiny little things. Get back on a routine of, we'll call it the routine of the military if you want to call it that. If you need to shave every day to get back on a routine, I don't need to, but I do crack out my push-ups. What I do is I look after myself. And you've made the example of when guys get out, they stop looking after themselves because they feel that they don't need to look after themselves anymore. I never stopped looking after myself because I was looking after me to look after the team because that's what I was taught. And I've never forgotten that. And so anyone out there who's struggling with the fact that every morning they haven't done a push-up or they're living off Cocoa Puffs every day, if you're not living a good life, you know it. And it is just because you've formed a pattern of not living a good life doesn't mean that tomorrow you've got to run the same stupid program. Run a better program. If you're struggling right now, pick up a phone and call a friend. If you're struggling right now and you don't want to talk to anyone, do 2 push-ups. See how you feel after 2 push-ups. For sure, you'll feel better because now you are in control.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was I was going to add into that was the fact that you don't have to have shaving as the discipline. It can be anything, like making your bed, right? That's just, we've been taught how to use the discipline. So when we, at least when I got out, I was like, I'm not required to do this anymore. Therefore, I'm not going to. And the sad part is that I allowed those daily disciplines that kept me in check. I didn't replace them with any other disciplines.
I think
I just dumped them.
I wonder if it's maybe like people when they're in the military, or well, since we're talking about making beds and shaving and whatnot, if they really understand why they're doing all those things. Like, why are you actually making your bed in the morning? Is it just to be clean, or is it to create discipline over a period of time? And I think maybe sometimes people might forget that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do people forget that that's why you're actually making your bed, or is it just?
I said it yesterday. We spoke specifically about depression yesterday for the entire hour, and I think I stated pretty clearly that most people have forgotten discipline.
Yeah, it's
the word.
Yeah,
I mean, just they've forgotten the entire word. Never mind the practice. I mean, it's not even in common language anymore. I mean, it's thrown around sometimes casually as "get disciplined" on a T-shirt. But that means nothing to anyone until you're actively pursuing discipline in everything that you do every day. And you've got to be disciplined with discipline. Otherwise, it's not discipline. It's just random acts of whatevers. Discipline is a routine.
I was actually telling Sach about this right before we came in, before you guys jumped into the green room, was this morning I had been sitting on the couch doing stuff for the collective, and I've been using my phone, and I'd been sitting there for about an hour, and I realized like, oh, I still need to get a ride in. Okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to have breakfast really quickly, and then I'm going to run out. And so I got in there and I was like, I'm kind of tired and I'm a little stiff, so I'll just make myself some cereal. It's easy. And in that moment I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And then I went to the fridge and I made myself I put some protein in a protein powder, blah blah blah. I made a nice little breakfast with Greek yogurt and some fruit. And,
well, good man.
Like, it was good times.
What was it that came in your head in the moment?
I was going to ask the exact same question.
What was the shift? What was the precipitating factor that made you make a change?
Honestly, it was the moment my brain said, this will be easier. And I was like, nope. And it was, what actually kicked in was Doc Gino said something yesterday, and he was like, in order to manage these issues, and when you're talking about discipline, it is consistently choosing the harder choice.
Awesome.
And I was like, this will be easier. And I heard Doc Gino go, what's the harder choice? And I was like, right.
That's okay.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc.
You know what's easier? Picking the harder choice every single time, because it's so clear and evident which one's the harder one.
Yeah. It was and it was just like sheer, it is technically easier to take cereal and pour it in a bowl, right? But
yeah, the physical activity is
easier. Yeah,
it ain't easier on your melon.
Exactly. Not in the long run, it's not. So that's a big part of it.
And not in the moment, buddy.
True.
I mean, the moment that you pour those Count Choculas into the bowl, you've already given up on yourself. You know what I'm saying? Yep, like we can all pretend that that is not what is happening. But we all know that the moment that you spoon that Count Chocolate into you, you gave up.
Yeah.
You gave up on the day to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 100%. And I think that, especially when we're talking about ideation and suicide, and I think after this whole discussion, we've been talking about an hour now, I'm seeing it now a little bit differently, in that I think it is it's a slippery slope, and there's a lot of choices that go to the point that get you to suicide ideation, and a lot of choices that get you to the point of suicide. But a lot of it is just taking that easier choice, right? I don't want to go for a run today. I'm a little tired. I'm going to choose not to. That's technically, in the moment, the easier choice, right?
Slips.
Tiny little slip, and then another tiny little slip, and you just and then before you realize it, now you're in a hole rather than on the line. And
you might not realize it But that's why there's these things called cold eye reviews,
Exactly.
where someone keeps an eye on you, someone drops you a line, says, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" And checks in with you. Not check in with a, "Hey, buddy, see you later. See you next week, buddy."
Yeah.
That to me is not a check-in. A check-in is to establish an individual's psychological state. And that is something that can happen in 30 seconds, or it might take 3 minutes. But take the time to understand that the person is doing well, and also to encourage them to do better.
In Chance, like to your point about how you were talking about like, oh, you didn't feel like doing it, but you still did it. I mean, we all have that too, right? Like even today, I didn't want to go for a run, man. I was thinking about it for a bit, but fortunately for me, I'm fairly disciplined now, and I still got after it. But I still was questioning myself in the morning. I was like, man, I don't want to run for 2 hours. Are you kidding me? But get it happening.
Discipline.
So I have a couple of quick points here that I wanted to hit, and then we'll get into some final thoughts. But before we do that, anything else percolating before we get into that? Good? Okay. So Tanya says, curiosity is big. I can't stay depressed and be curious or engaged when learning a new skill. I take up a new hobby when I feel that darkness settle in, which I think is a great plan. Also, diving in further into a hobby, right? You don't need to continually take up new hobbies, but you can also dive further into a hobby that you already have.
Or, using the hobby as the example, instead of starting a bunch of new hobbies or diving deeper into a new hobby, take what you know about the hobby and engage with others by teaching them what you know.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I like
that. She then goes on to say, depression is like getting ground and pounded while being mounted. It does suck for sure. But she says this, and it's fantastic. Accept the situation, listen to your corner, and small steps get you out, not big quick fixes. And that is such a great key, because it is small steps.
Depression is not like getting ground and pounded. Depression is like looking at the ring that you're about to step into and thinking, I don't want to get ground and pounded. I think what I'll do is look around the crowd and figure this out. I don't want anyone out there to think that depression requires you to get ground and pounded. There's many steps beforehand. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like depression is almost like creeping death, man. It's something
it's a creeper.
Yeah.
It is. I think what
I understand what she's saying.
Yeah.
I
just wanted to clarify is that depression is, we said it yesterday, it's like having, a silverback gorilla on you all the time, and it's in your brain, and it's in your, like, everything is order of magnitude harder.
And because we're thinking
in the
about
ring.
all the things because we're thinking about all the things we screwed up on in life. We're reflecting on the past and not staying in the moment. That's essentially what depression is, right? And all of us have made tons of mistakes, I'm sure. And so, the whole planet could be depressed. But why isn't it? Because a lot of people tend to live in the moment and keep moving forward, keep trying to create momentum. And
I think the one way I look at it is what, especially to go back to Panda and Shaun's point, where that ground and pound, it's like you've already ground and pounded yourself before you even get into the ring. You've already set yourself up for failure. You know what I mean? Like,
and I mean, long before the ring, you've got a fight camp. Long before the fight camp, you've got an agent. Long before your agent, you've got some dreams about becoming a pro fighter. There's lots of steps before you're getting your head smashed in the ring that you can better understand what's happening. Like Dave said, I think it's a creeper. It's a slippery slope that happens slowly for some people. And as long as you're aware, the moment that you become aware, that's the time to get involved rather than letting it keep creeping until you're mounted and getting your head smashed in.
Absolutely. I said it yesterday. The best thing that helped me was being able to recognize the episodes earlier.
Yeah,
right. The earlier I can go, oh, okay, I can feel the episode coming on, and then engage it immediately. It lessens the episode. So
didn't even have to get in the ring.
There you go. So Rob, what's that?
But you should get in the ring.
Should get in the ring, 100%, and that's it, right?
Yeah,
that's a whole nother discussion. So, So Rob says, I found that during those moments, doing the opposite of what I want to do is probably the right answer. Yeah. If I don't want to move, I then need to move. If I feel like talking to no one, I need to speak to someone. Exploration with the mind is expansion of the mind, and perspective gained provides new solutions.
Yeah, and just real quick on Robbo there. So what he's discussing is contrarianism with yourself to some degree. I think this, but I'm going to do the complete opposite. You know what? That's not a bad idea at all. If everything that you've been doing hasn't been working up until then, if you keep slipping, then do the opposite of what you think you should be doing. Don't want to talk to someone, like Robbo said, reach out to someone and talk to them, even if it feels like it's the worst idea ever. Up until that point, maybe everything hasn't been working for you, so give something else a try.
Yeah, 100%. Now, we're a little over time here, but I think it definitely was worth the time to make the discussion. Any final thoughts? Anything on the back burner that we didn't quite hit? Sach?
No, I'm just glad we're having a conversation like this, man. I mean, we're having conversations, talking about things that are generally taboo, right? So I'm just glad we're doing it, man, and continue to do it.
Awesome. Dave?
Yeah, I guess since we're on the topic here about suicide and ideation, for those who are maybe viewing right now and don't know my story, I am a survivor of suicide attempt. And I attempted with a firearm, and I survived it. And everybody, like Chance and Sach and Shaun, are all aware that I'm actually grateful to be alive. And unfortunately, I had to learn that the hard way. The thing is that I've been, throughout my military career, I've been to a lot of funerals for soldiers in suicide, lost a good friend to suicide. And it's that ripple effect of what happens when someone takes their life. Like if someone's watching right now and they're like, yeah, I'm that person where like I thought about taking my life, I assure you that you are gonna break a lot of hearts, because there are people who care about you and people that want you to succeed and to get the help that you're required and to live a happy, healthy life. Nobody wants you to live, with your face in the mud, unless that's, if you want to be a sniper, that's par for the course. But I mean, in the mud of life, nobody here wants you to live your life with your face in the mud of life. We want you to be, to do well. Life is going to be challenging, and we understand that. But find people who want to be in your corner and keep those people and maintain those relationships. And this is going to be an ongoing discussion, I guess.
Can I say one more thing real quick?
Sure.
You said you were thankful, Dave, that you survived.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say for myself, I'm thankful that you survived, because it's a blessing to be able to have a conversation with someone like you and be able to share some of these ideas and thoughts. So thanks, you.
Brother. Thank you.
Shaun, final thoughts?
Well, I did have some final thoughts, but then Sach came in with the heat. He stole my thought. That was my thought, my only thought. So I will add this. Thanks, boys, for the conversation. It was great, in the sense that we covered some of the subject openly, honestly, emotionally transparent on the subject, which a lot of men struggle with. We're trying to set the record straight in a different way now by talking about tough subjects, challenging subjects, but facing them head on so that we can get in front of this problem.
Roger that.
Could not agree more. One final comment from Rob. Good talk, gents. Thank you for having the openness to discuss it publicly. The world needs more honesty in this arena and strength to discuss it. And I totally agree. Yeah, Dave, thanks so much. Sach, always good to have you guys on. Shaun, great conversation. It's been, it was not as difficult as I think we imagined it to be. And I think
isn't that life?
Isn't that life, right? So as we learn how to open up within ourselves. As we build the circle around us, we can grow as human beings, as men. And you can do that every day here on the collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.
You know.